Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. So this is a preliminary version of my doctoral thesis proposal titled "Can Bayesian Methods Facilitate the Process of Using Small Trials to Inform Definitive Trials?" I want to mention that I am no expert of Bayesian statistics, and there are a lot of questions that I want to answer under this project that yet to be answered. So any questions or comments are welcome. Definitive trials can be defined as appropriate powered studies focusing on the efficacy of the intervention. They are usually very expensive. The median cost of conducting a definitive trial is about 19 million in the year of 2015. And this is approximately equal to the cost to vaccinate the whole Baltimore City with Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines today. Definitive trials also have high failure rate. It is estimated that two-thirds oncology phase 3 trials failed to obtain FDA approval at the end. And of course, the cost of a failed phase 3 trial is not only the cost associated with the trial itself, but also the cost associated with the studies prior to the trial, and also the time, the money, and resources that we used to conduct this trial, and other relevant studies could have been used on other interventions. So in a word, there is a high cost of failed definitive trials. Why do trials fail then? Among the audience today, we have a lot of trial experts, so I'm sure they have many explanations for this. But according to one review, the primary reason that a trial fails is the lack of efficacy of the intervention. Another repeated thing across different trials is the difficulties with patient recruitment, enrollment, and retention. And this is related to the lack of feasibility of the trial. Other factors may include safety issues of the intervention, lack of funding, and so on. Now let's move on to small trials. I wasn't able to find a formal definition of small trials, and usually, so by small, we mean small sample size trials. And actually, how small is small depends on the context. A sample size of 100 may be too small for one context, but is enough for another. Recently, researchers have classified small trials in the following 4 types: pilot trials or feasibility trials. There are researchers who distinguish these 2 terms, but in this project, we will just use these terms interchangeably. The second type is early stage, for instance, phase 1, phase 2 trials, or proof of concept trials, which are normally phase 1A trials. Thirdly, trials in rare diseases or difficult to recruit populations, and underpowered trials. These 4 categories are by no means mutually exclusive. For instance, early stage trials could be underpowered. For the purpose of the current project, we will focus on the first 2 types of small trials, which can inform definitive trials. There are issues with small trials, and one apparent issue is the insufficient power due to the small sample size. Because of the low power in these studies, we may observe effect that vibrates a lot, mainly meaning that we have a wide confidence interval. And also we may fail to detect a true difference between groups. this increases the positive negative results. And because in small sized trials, the magnitude of the effect needs to be large to be captured. Therefore, when we observe a significant result, it may not be actually true at all. Therefore, we have a low positive predicted value, or if the true situation is that there is a significant difference between groups, we may actually observe an exaggerated magnitude of effect due to the small size of the trial. All these factors would result in the lower reproducibility of the trial result. And we want these results to be reproducible because we want to use them to inform the definitive trial. So how can we improve the situation? Recent years, there has been an increasing interest in using Bayesian approach to analyze trial data. Some researchers believe that Bayesian approaches are better equipped to handle small sample situations. They do not rely on the asymptotic assumption of like the frequentist approach does. Also, we know that Bayesian approach can quantitatively incorporate prior or external information into the analysis. It can also quantify the uncertainty around the parameters by estimating posterior probability. Therefore, in the current proposal, we want to use small trials to inform definitive trials. And there are two main types of small trials that we will focus on. One is the feasibility trial, which will inform the feasibility of the definitive trials. And the second one is phase 2 or proof of concept trial, which will inform the efficacy of the definitive trials. As previously mentioned, there are several issues around the small sample size issue of the small trials, which in turn would decrease the reproducibility of the trials. And the question is whether or not the Bayesian approach can better inform the situation. Okay, now I will stop recording.